Hello, and welcome back to Southeast Asia Talks. I'm Edwin Shri Bimo from the China Global South Project. Today, we are going to discuss about the politics of optics of gestures in Southeast Asia, including in China. The rivalry between the US, Europe, and China. Um, there's this tension and sometimes misinterpretation or even lack of interpretation of how Asia works and sends message to the other party. That's what we are going to discuss now because uh, pictures move policy in Southeast Asia and China. Optics, gestures, and symbolism, they are not decoration. Basically, they're message. And today we will decode how slogans, how position in the pictures, how seating charts and photo ops and parade signals intent long before policy lands on paper even. Now we have our colleague. Uh, he's a well-respected researcher from the University of Indonesia, Shofwan Al Banna Choiruzzad. Mas Sofwan, let's read the frame here. How can we start understanding gestures, symbolism um, in Southeast Asia, at the level of international politics? Please do.
First of all, culture matters in international politics. International politics is not just about material distribution of power. At the basic level, international relations is social relations. And social relations is relational. It is socially constructed. It is connected to how one perceive others and expecting some recognitions from others as well. Thus, although I am not a cultural essentialist, which argue that there is an essential Eastern culture or an essential Western culture, I do believe that social construction for a long period of time, which then converged into specific forms of culture, gestures, and symbolism does matter in international politics. If we understand international politics as social relations, we understand that people in this part of the world is often understood as high context cultures where you are not only sending message through the literal words that you say, but also how do you say it, how you show a particular gesture, etc. If you remember, Edwin, during the decolonization period, there were a lot of efforts, not only to push real agenda through pushing like substantial debate or arguments or mobilizing real material capitals, but also a lot of efforts for world making, for stage making, which is crafted through developing particular image or events or symbols. This is the interesting thing. If you are hosting a global event where leaders from different parts of the world, many of them are still not independent and under threat of from the security apparatus, from the colonial power. The rational option is actually not to parade them on the streets, right? But in the Asian African Conference, what Indonesia as the organizer do is they ask the leaders to do this Asian African walk, where all
March.
Asian and African countries are marching together, showing solidarity and just walk. I mean, this is a very symbolic gesture, which might hold no like substantial impact on the discussion of the conference. But this is a very important message of the conference itself, which is that the Asian and African countries, communities are united, and they demand a more just, a more equal world, and they are ready to march together for decolonization. So it is symbolic. This is why, for example, I think this pretty much continues in many ways. In ASEAN, for example, we know the ASEAN way. I often heard European or American diplomats complaining that if they are engaging in meetings with ASEAN, so many protocol, so many how to say, so many procedural things or non-necessary things. So the discussion is not directly going to the negotiation. So in the United States or in the European style of diplomacy, they tend to focus on, for example, what are we negotiating and how do we negotiate it? What do you want? What I want? Just say directly. But in the ASEAN way, people starts by, for example, hosting a welcoming ceremony with a lot of how to say, a lot of entertainment,
Yeah.
and a lot of social events, etc. Including how do you welcome the guest who is coming to pick up the guests. That also contain some meaning. The seating arrangements. That is why often to avoid for example, the interpretation that there are some dominating powers in ASEAN or ASEAN plus 3 meetings. In ASEAN or ASEAN plus 3 meetings, usually the arrangement is based on like alphabetical. So it is crafted. People are not only looking at the substance or the material, but the whole setting, the whole stage, the whole gesture, the whole pictures, the whole how to say, the whole stage is actually sending a message. So yeah, so I think you are right in the sense that since it is culturally embedded, sometimes this message do not come across people with different traditions, with different habits, with different ways of looking at things. So sometimes it creates interesting
Yes.
interactions.
Yeah. How do you see China's understanding in this matter when they are relating with Southeast Asia? Yes.
Well, I think it is important to know and to understand that, of course, we cannot really be sure whether these messages are often accurately understood or responded by other actors, because of course this is a social process where actors are having their own how to say, worldview and traditions and habits, etc. But of course, in terms of relative understanding, China has culturally, as a civilization, which need to be differentiated with China as a state, had been in this region for a long time. And throughout thousands of years, there are interactions where cultures are exchanged, where diplomatic exchanges are happening, not always in a positive manner. I mean, we know the fight between the Yuan dynasty and Singosari Kediri, which lead to the establishment of Majapahit in Indonesia. But throughout all of these thousands years of interactions, of course, China and those in Southeast Asia has more opportunity for interactions. But we should remember, for example, in many Southeast Asian countries for a long time, China was pretty much, the relationship with China was pretty much cut. So there are also a lot of catching up and the need to understand each other culturally. But we should remember that cultural proximity is not the only thing that matter. So there are also other aspects as well, which could hinder or could help to uh, to to connect the understanding of these countries in Southeast Asia and in China, for example. And we should,
Yeah.
and we should remember that the messages are often sending multiple messages to different people. Like if you mentioned the Prabowo's visit to China, for example, I think what Prabowo wants to convey to China is that, we are ready to be a trusted friends for you. So this is a very important event for you, only once in 10 years. And if I'm not coming, I mean, it's like, so social events are very important in countries like Indonesia or other Southeast Asian countries. A lot of
Including
weddings,
China, perhaps. Yeah.
and including China. In a lot of wedding ceremonies, a lot of after some grief, some people pass away, the neighbors are coming, etc. So it's part of the social process and social tradition across the region. And I think that also affects the way the leaders are communicating. And
Yeah. Speaking of that photo, there are lots of Southeast Asian leaders there in that photo, and each person, each leader is there within the context of the politics of optics and symbolism and gestures. They also sends message to outside, to the external party, to the world. What do specialists in Northern America or in Europe needs to see those photos? How should they read the photo there and all the events in between in sequence from there?
there is a tendency of, for example, interpreting the picture of Prabowo with Putin and Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping as meaning that Indonesia has been has joined the axis of how to say, Beijing or something like that. So I think that is pretty much overstretched. This interpretation needs to be rethink. It is important to understand this in the context of Indonesia trying to be socially a responsible partner in a complex global politics. So it is not a statement of allegiance. I think it is important to not looking at it in the Cold War lens or in the optic of great power rivalry. We should understand this in the optic of Asian social relations, which then elevated into the way national leaders are interacting at the global stage.
From the public response of the leader of the United States, do you think they get the message but reacted unproductively, or they didn't get the message, or they get the message and they responded as according to what they want to respond?
I think they understand this as a message from China that China is strong enough, China is wealthy enough, and China is ready to fight if you want to fight. And I think that is in general what China wants to convey, probably, with the aim of avoiding conflict. I mean, if you are showing that you are strong enough, wealthy enough, hopefully people who dislike you will not disturb you, right? But it could also go the other way. It increase the insecurity from the other actors as well, because then you see, if we are not stopping China now, it will be more dangerous in the future. So I think, the message come across partially, but of course the interpretation and the response is pretty much affected by how Washington views the position of China and the United States in the global politics. So, of course, there are filters and frames and optics which then would further be used to interpret China's intention. So it could go, but it could go to another direction. But yes, of course, we do not know what will happen. We need to see. So let's look at what the US will further pursue after this.
If we from Southeast Asia who have longer exposure to each other with each other in this world of symbolism culture, how would you advise European colleagues or partners, or American colleagues or partners, or policymaker on how to read all this symbolism, all these gestures at this high level, at state level? So how would you advise colleagues outside Asia and Southeast Asia?
Well, I think since it is pretty much social interactions is the key. So I think need more engagements, both at formal official levels as well as at track 2 levels, on the informal levels. Non-governmental relationships need to be more intensified. I think part of the reason why many messages fail to come across is also because of the levels of interactions are declining. Why the levels of interactions are declining? Because trust is also declining. So it's like an egg and a chicken situation. So my suggestion would be intervene by creating more opportunities for interaction. If official interactions are still very sensitive, track 2 interactions would be an important channel. So you need to have these track 2 or track 1.5 activated between US and China, Japan and China, US and Southeast Asia, and China as well. So I think we need this 1.5 and second track diplomacy to be further optimized. And second suggestion would be investing more in area studies. The US and the Western universities and Western governments right now are cutting fundings to area studies, while maybe
yeah.
it's very important source to understand this region.
Well, that would be difficult. Exchanges of students or future diplomats of the U.S. studying in Chinese universities or vice versa.
Yeah,
But that's important to build understanding, right?
Yeah, but could start with easier ones. I mean, U.S.-China rapprochement during the Cold War started with ping pong, right? I mean, you do not need to start with something heavy. I mean, like you could start with ping pong in the past. You could start with panda, right? Last time, so panda, ping pong. You could find another way to create this engagements and trying to understand each other. I think the world will be beneficial if U.S., China, two important global players today are trying to get out from the great power rivalry mentality and framework into more productive ways of interactions among them.
Yeah. Okay. Before we close, my question: do you think it's because of a different definition and different way of showing respect at that highest level?
Well, I think partly, of course, but culture is part of the story. It is true that the way Asians or Chinese and the way the Europeans or Americans are expressing respect are different. But of course, there are also other factors as well. And I think a very important factors in that is one is the domination of the worldview of the impossibility to avoid great power rivalry, and this is very much dominant in the U.S. Literatures and policy circles. China has already been identified as a revisionist power in the U.S. national security strategy. So with that framework, it is, I mean, if you could not, if you see the world in that interpretation, of course, whatever the message, the symbols are given would be interpreted in that lens. So I think it is important for people in Washington as well as in Beijing to then move on from this Cold War way of thinking, this great power rivalry inevitability. We can avoid the Thucydides trap. We can we can develop more productive engagements. And I think this is where countries like Southeast Asia can play an important role. Middle powers like Indonesia can play an important role. They want to express that they are ready to be a good friend of China, but at the same time, they are trying to express their willingness also to be a good friend of the United States, and that China and the United States can be good friends too. So yeah, I think the main contributor is this entrenchment of this Cold War paradigm, this great power rivalry paradigm in the policy circle.
It's difficult, no? I mean, if from the Washington looking at Malaysia, getting closer to China, Indonesia as well, Thailand perhaps. If looking at Southeast Asia from a Cold War mentality, automatically these countries in Southeast Asia would be seen as collaborator, potential enemy. The world will go nowhere with that.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah, and it's very dangerous. So it's important to remind these great powers that we should avoid such way of viewing the world. The world is more than the great powers. The world should be managed to develop a better and more just world for everyone. And I think for that, we need more engagements. We need to develop more trust. We need to create more interactions. So cultural differences, political differences might still be there, but with more interactions, with more engagements, we can learn each other more, and hopefully we can slowly, but sure, develop more trust among each other.
Thank you. Any addition on how Europeans and Americans need to understand? Any more insights that you think important?
apart from track 1 and track 2, as well as the investing more on area studies, I think for Europeans and Americans, I think they need to talk more with Southeast Asians. I mean, if you do not understand these people, like China, for example, maybe you need to ask and listen to people who are also interacting with them, and not only talking. The problem with many Western powers are they are coming to Southeast Asia and preaching about and preaching, speaking. They do not want to listen. They say China is dangerous, China is disturbing international law, etc. Well, yes, in this part of the world, Southeast Asia is also countries that are aware that there are some risk and some challenges in interacting with China. You do not need to teach us about that. We know that there are some issues in our relationship with China. But we also have issues with you as well. I mean, it's natural. We, of course, have issues with everyone, but there are also opportunities for cooperation with everyone. So I think the other key aspect is that Europeans and Americans need to listen more rather than preaching. I think this works too in Africa. There is an African leader, I think, would say that when China come, they give investment for something. When the Europeans come, they come to preach, something like that. So, but I think this is a very common observation that Westerners tend to preach rather than to listen. And I think one important thing that they need to learn is to listen more, including to what they perceive as smaller powers like Southeast Asian countries.
Wow. So at the end of the day, it's about interaction, person to person, particularly when they are leaders. You're not listening, then I'm not going to do business with you. You're listening, maybe just because of your listening, we will do business with you.